Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's session of The Pivot, organized by the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance, NOVA EDA. I'm John Jacobs, your host for today's session and for this series. Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be an outstanding session and workshop, in fact. So I welcome your participation and your presence here today. Today's workshop is focused on one of the most critical tools in your job search, your resume. Specifically, how to reposition your experience and skills so your resume opens doors to new industries and roles. So a few housekeeping items first, if I may. The chat is open to everyone. So that is the panelists and certainly the audience and myself. And I would ask you, these sessions, I should say, really are valuable when folks participate, when you chat amongst yourselves as the community that you are, and you can put questions to each other and support each other, and that's great. Often I have found there's a lot of brainstorming that goes on, so feel free to do that. It's the more the better. Also, there's a Q&A button, so there's a chat button and a Q&A button. With the Q&A button, try to direct your questions for the panelists there. Not the end of the world if it ends up in the chat, because we'll follow along. Certainly I will as we go through, but if you could put it into the Q&A section. We'll answer the most of the questions toward at the end of the discussion. However, we might cherry pick one or two if it's relevant to what we're talking about at that moment. Today's session is entitled Resume Overhaul, How to Sell Your Skills as You Pivot. And we have a fantastic panel together for you today. I'm so happy about the folks I'll be introducing. Tonya Muse is a respected executive recruiter and practice leader with Heidrick & Struggles, a premier executive recruiting firm. Tonya brings deep expertise in association and nonprofit leadership and understands how hiring managers, what they're really looking for, and how to make your resume rise to the top of that digital pile. Nancy Siegel is a federal HR expert with 30 years of government service herself, who has helped countless government employees navigate transitions. Nancy is also owner of the Solutions for the Workplace, LLC, where she helps federal workers, military members, and private sector employees pivot to their next role. Amanda Augustine is a nationally recognized career coach and spokesperson for Top Resume. Amanda specializes in resume strategy, branding, and helping job seekers market themselves with confidence, especially during times of career change. So welcome, panel. Thank you very much for being here today and taking part in this important workshop. I'm going to begin, if I may, with some just a few broad questions for the three of you. And maybe this first one I'll ask Amanda to respond first, just so chaos does not ensue, which is not likely in any case. Amanda, how have resume expectations changed over the past years, especially for people in transitioning to a new industry?
I think the days of just putting your experience down and expecting someone to be able to translate that by looking at what you've done are gone. And now, especially if you're trying to pivot, you need to translate your experience into terms that your new target audience, whoever that type of employer is going to be, can understand and appreciate. And so there's no more guesswork. You really have to, what I call, idiot proof the resume. So anybody who's doing a quick glance at it will understand and appreciate why you are a good fit for whatever type of role you're pursuing, particularly if you're trying to make a major change either to a new industry or a completely new career path.
Great, thank you. Nancy, Tanya?
I would just add that you should really ensure that your skills and your competencies are highlighted, that they're really prominent on your resume. And to Amanda's point, just make sure that there's alignment, that your resume really is aligned to the role. No more just sending out one resume for 50 roles. It really does need to be customized.
Yeah, it's your responsibility to connect the dots between what you've done and what you want to do. And it's not about your duties. Nobody cares what you did. When I see resumes that just have a list of duties, it begs the question, how does anyone know you did your duties well?
Yeah.
It's your
100%.
job to communicate that in language the reader, your target audience can understand. And the government has such a different approach here. Just kind of navigating that is critical.
Yeah. How do you, the good thing for everyone who's looking to pivot is that we have seen this growing trend, this emphasis on skills-based hiring versus do you have the particular degree and have you held the particular job title before? Everyone cares about, do you possess the skills to do this job? However, you have to prove that you can do them and do them well by tying those skills
Bingo.
to output, to value, to some sort of contribution, whether you can quantify it or not, and get it on the resume.
You can't just list the words,
Yeah.
right?
Everyone can say they're great at something. Prove it. Give us a case study. Give us a
Prove
bullet
it.
point that talks about how you leverage that skill to decrease the time it took to do something or affect the bottom line or make a customer happy, whatever that might be.
And affecting the bottom line, I'm sorry, Tanya, I didn't mean to step in your stuff, but affecting the bottom line is not something feds are used to thinking about.
Right.
And so, getting more money isn't necessarily a plus.
Right.
Asking for more staff and getting it successfully is not necessarily a plus, right?
Unless
One
you
of
can
the-
swerve it into negotiating. How can you tell that you're a great negotiator? They wanted
Bingo.
to give you this and you were able to get more than that.
Right.
Tanya, did you have something you wanted to add there as well?
No, I would say, and I think Nancy hit on it, but, we used to see resumes that said, I'm an award-winning XYZ. But again, that's okay, but we need to show how you got to be that award-winning journalist or you received XYZ awards. It's showing the tangible impact.
It almost seems like all three of you are saying, and this sort of goes to the next question, but you're kind of covering it already, that there's almost a formula or there's a relationship between every part of a resume. So, someone just wrote the word star, right? And we know that star is an abbreviation for, oh my goodness, what is it abbreviation for? I keep forgetting.
Situation.
Keep
Go ahead,
going.
you do it.
Task, action, result.
Result.
That's right, Nancy. Well done. Situation, task,
It's not
action,
even
and
my
result.
thing. I like CCAR.
She likes CCAR, yeah. I grew up as a star gal.
It's all good.
And I grew up with car.
Yes, there you go.
And I haven't grown up.
Generational Nancy.
Indeed. I think we've made that clear.
So what I'm taking is, because somebody had asked about an example, but I think the star or seat car are good methodologies that create a logic essentially in a resume rather than a laundry list of duties or roles, correct?
Yeah. I think we're going to get into it, maybe breaking down the resume structure a bit more,
Yes.
but my favorite method is when we're looking at a particular role, there's a short blurb, I'm talking maybe 3 or so lines that describe what were you overall responsible for, and then the bullet points are used as your bragging points, and that's where you say, and here's what I did in that role. And the formula I use is, or the format is, result by action. Increased revenue X% by implementing X, Y, and Z. Decrease spend on X, Y, and Z X% by implementing this, by leading the team to do that, by reassessing X, Y, and whatever that might be. But start with the output and then explain how you got to that output so that the emphasis is always on what I did, what I was able to provide or contribute, and then how did I get there?
You're backing up the car.
Yes, exactly. It's a rats.
Tanya, when you think, then that's sort of the biggest mistakes folks make about restructuring or populating their resumes. I remember updating mine and is it a sort of, this is a tactical kind of question, but you know, you have the professional statement or summary at the top. You know, I always struggle with, is it one sentence? Is it 8 sentences? Is it a book? What are some of the biggest mistakes folks make just in the structure of resumes? But maybe ask Tanya first, and Amanda and Nancy jump in.
Sure. So one of the biggest mistakes is just a resume that's too long. They want to list all of their awards, their honors, their articles. They want to list everything. But to your point, it's having a really succinct, crisp executive summary or summary up front, no more than 3 to 5 sentences, 3 ideally, or even bullets. I try to say, maybe capture 6 bullets of what are your core skills and competencies? What are you good at? Strategic planning, fiscal responsibility, stakeholder engagement, whatever that might be, policy expert. So being crisp up front. Sometimes it's too short. So you want to, and Amanda just talked about this, make sure that you do have a strong opening statement. So if you are, state your title, but also a brief overview of what you've done, but make sure that you are listing metrics, quantifiable action. What's the ROI? What's the impact that you've had? Also like to see teams the size team or people that you've managed, size budgets that you've managed. Also make sure that you don't have to list your 20, 30, 40-year career. So I would keep it maybe within 15, 20 years at the most. And then you can just really list out your career over the previous 20 years. Title, years. We want to make sure that there's no gaps in your resume. So we want to, and that's another mistake. Just make sure that there's no gaps from year to year. If you do have gaps there, please explain them. We want to know if you've had to take a leave of absence, you're on maternity leave, you've moved across country, whatever that might be, but just explain those gaps. Sometimes people try to hide it, but I think, since COVID, we've given grace and opportunity for people to have more flexibility in their openness in their transitions. I am a stickler of design. So depending on your industry, if you're an artist or designer, you might want to be creative on your resume. What's most important is being clear so that you're communicating with clarity. If your resume is too busy, it's going to be really hard. We are really just scanning initial scans, or Mr. AI or Miss AI is scanning for some critical key points. It might look pretty, but we just want to make sure that you are really highlighting your skills and competencies and wins.
The relevant ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about anything that does not support your ability to do the job. I don't care that you're the Brownie leader, or you sing in the church choir, or you like to climb mountains. I promise you. You want to discuss that in your interview? Fine. But do not waste valuable resume real estate
Right.
on stuff that doesn't further the ball.
I think I
Amanda?
piggyback on that. And when we're thinking about mistakes, it's forgetting that you're writing the resume for a particular audience, for a prospective employer, for a recruiter. It's not written for you, it's written for them. And therefore, it shouldn't be a laundry list of everything and anything you've ever done. It's not a transcript. You need to shift your mindset and think of it as a marketing document. And it's being carefully curated based on what your new goal is. So once you figure out that goal, you're sitting there and literally going line in line through your resume and saying, is that relevant? Does that make sense? Do I need to explain it differently so that people understand it makes sense? Or is it not important to this resume? Not creating employment gaps, but just either elaborating or condensing, summarizing, or omitting parts of information that are either very relevant now or no longer relevant given a shift in your goals. And this is for anyone who's doing any type of pivot, because again, we want to keep it to about 2 pages. They're not going to look at anything longer than that.
Right.
Tanya, do you spend more than 10 seconds on that initial glance before you decide I'll take a look at it later versus thanks, but no thanks?
Right. And I look at
Yeah.
the top half of the resume,
Yeah.
obviously first, and see if that captures
Yeah.
my attention.
Above
And
the
then-
fold. Think of
Mhm.
that.
Yes, yay,
That wing.
Moynihan.
We always say
Mhm.
above the fold, that top third, it's the
Yep.
amuse-bouche, and it's got to
Yep.
whet their appetite and make them want to read the
Right.
rest of it because you've already hooked them on, okay, this is relevant to what I'm
And
trying to
that's why
source
the
for.
executive summary of those competencies up top, those
Yeah.
bullets are really important.
Yeah.
I just want to answer one of the questions that's in the chat because it's just
Sure.
one of those things.
Ooh,
What if your best experience was
maybe
15
yes.
years ago?
Good
Well,
question.
then guess what? You're not that qualified for this job. I don't mean to be rude and disrespectful or dismissive. I myself have had a 50-year career, but you don't want to still be talking about Y2K or be like one of those guys, and I hope this is no one on this call, who is still talking about their high school football touchdown and they're 60. People want to know what you've done recently that is relevant to them.
Mhm.
It's not that you were born fully formed. None of us were, but you can have, to Tanya's and Amanda's prior comments, a category on your resume called earlier professional experience.
Mhm.
List the duties, I mean, list the employer, the city, the state. I would
The
not
title.
put title. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I would not put the years
Nope. No.
because you don't want somebody counting. I mean,
Right.
if I said out loud that I graduated college in 1974, which is a true statement, uh, what's the fee? People are going to be counting.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not a good look.
Yeah.
Something else you can do, if say there's a company that you really want to name drop because you know it's
Mhm.
important in your industry, or say you're trying to get back into that industry and you want it to pop up. If you don't want to list all your previous experience, or again, you don't want people doing the math and figuring out all the different roles, you can just write career note : previous roles included work as a
That
blah, blah,
works
blah
too.
at company
Yep.
ABC and da, da, da at company AJK. Additional details available upon request. And that's going to allow you to get it mentioned so that it will help, again, with maybe ATS or something like that, but not dwell on that experience. Because again, correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya, most employers are saying it's cool you did that 20 years ago, but what have you done recently that's relevant? Tell me how it ties back to what you're looking to do now.
Yeah, the goal is to always keep in mind you want to get in the door. You want that first entry into that organization that you're applying for. So you want to capture that up front in your resume, get invited to interview, and then you can have a conversation and share more in depth about your previous history, experiences, drop names if you need to, those types of things.
Okay. So no one's trying to poke. We're just trying to be realistic. There is arguable age bias. And if you look at the demographics of the federal government vis-a-vis the private sector trends, and I'm not saying this is a good thing. Again, I'm in my 70s, okay? But the private sector trends about 15 years younger than the federal government. And
Mhm.
so I think we need to be just cognizant of the fact that not every employer values a 30-year career, rightly or wrongly, and they're worried about how much you might cost in
Yeah, I think
addition.
gone are the days of longevity in companies or organizations. Back when I was younger, it looked great to be working in your role for 20, 30 years. Nowadays, they want a shorter tenure because it's tied to culture and your mindset. of being able to be agile and flexible and assimilate into that current culture. And there's a question that talked about, and I found that I'm forced to declare education dates and workday portals. And Nancy, you might want to answer this, but to her earlier point, I would not include your graduation dates
I
because
agree.
Oh, yeah.
hiring committees, hiring people do sit there and they're thinking, oh, well, that makes them, 62 years old. I wonder how much longer they're willing to work. Oh, I don't want to take a risk
Or if they
because
can
I want
use a
somebody to
computer.
stay. Mm-hmm.
The, just trying to move, this is a wonderful conversation. We're getting, no,
Sorry.
no, it makes my
Yeah.
job so much easier. My core competency is laziness. So if I could just,
Stop.
uh,
I don't think I'd highlight that.
don't mention that. Nancy, you've 30 years in federal service, 20 years doing your own thing. Right now, we're in an environment where we have a significant sudden layoff of federal employees and government contractors, very sudden, and
Absolutely.
quite unexpected. Next month is September. I'll let you fill in the blank on that one.
Yep.
But what are your observations? What are folks doing well in this current environment as they get their arms and their minds around this? And what are they doing poorly? And Nancy, you can go and take them to task, given your experience.
Isn't that my role?
I think it is.
So it's a really challenging period. And look, I was a long-serving Fed. For those of you who here are Feds, I'm CSRS, if that gives you a clue how long-serving a Fed I am. That's the original retirement system. Yes. And the numbers are really hard to come by. Okay. It is about 154,000 employees that took the deferred resignation. Most of those people will be off the rolls September 30. Some of the others will be off by the end of the calendar year. That does not count the tens of thousands. Again, the numbers are not clear, of probationers who were separated and those who suffered or are in the middle of a reduction in force. So we're talking about somewhere in the range, and this is just a WAG kind of range, of about 250,000 people. The largest mass termination that's ever happened in this country before was 60,000, just to give a little bit of perspective. And I don't think it's over at the end of this year, just to be clear. So I think what everybody needs to do, and this is what I don't see everybody doing, a lot of people are waiting. I think that's a huge mistake. Because I don't know what they think is going to happen, truthfully, right? It's not going to get any better. The private sector is laying off. The Wall Street Journal yesterday said that was 60%, don't hold it, 40% of people who were unemployed have been unemployed for a minimum of 27 weeks, which is a really long time. So waiting is a huge mistake. The best thing you can do, and that I see people doing it, is gathering their performance reviews and self-assessments, copying them, pulling them out of whatever system they're in, copying them. In addition, I would encourage everyone to get personal contact information of people that they want to remain in contact with. So you have that on your personal computer or in a notebook, whatever your personal predilection is for tracking stuff. Get a copy of your 50s, please, and check them. Because so many of the 50s are wrong, not, out of malice, but just out of boo-boo mistakes. And get those corrected, because those are going to impact how you get paid out or not. You need to get your LinkedIn together. You need to, we're going to talk a little bit, and I know the Pivot's got a whole thing on LinkedIn. You know, you should have 500 or more contacts. You need a robust presence there. You need your picture, and you've got to start networking. That's the best practice. People hire people that they know, even if they know them 7 degrees of separation, a la Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon, did I get that right?
I think that's right.
Okay, close enough. For government work, close enough. So you've got to be out there and realize that the market is brutal right now. You know, in the prep for this, Amanda and I were talking, you know, both of us are telling clients 6 to 12 months. Now, can it happen sooner? You bet. And I hope everyone on this call, it happens sooner too. Right? Absolutely. That's the goal. But it's far from a guarantee. And so just being realistic about what you want, what you can do. It's not about I need. Because there's not one employer in the universe that gives 2 hoots what you need. They want to know what you can do for them. And that's all about setting up your value proposition or whatever, you know, QT term you want to use for it. I'm sorry, I'm going over my time. I'm passionate.
You're fine.
Yeah.
But you made me think about Amanda and her rebranding a bit here. And so to pivot,
Yeah. Let's talk about
let's talk about that a
structuring.
bit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And to
we needed to
Monique,
hear
I
it.
saw your comment. I mean, the most recent data said 27 weeks. So you divide that by 4, that's just short of 7 months. So yeah, unfortunately, it is a reality. So I think the real thing to take away is, okay, it's going to take persistence and it's going to take patience, but it's also going to be really strategic. So if you know how much money you have and you know what your runway is until you have to be getting a paycheck again, that's going to influence what your near-term job goal is. And there may be a longer-term goal in place, but there may be some stepping stones or some side work or gig work, freelancing to get you by. I've been laid off before. I've 100% been there. I'm actually doing a workshop tomorrow. If you go on LinkedIn, I'm doing it tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard, and it's just about being laid off and that sort of thing. But anyway, getting back to my question. Sorry, John.
No,
So
good.
we're talking about rebranding and structuring our resume. I apologize because I am going to go a little quickly, but I'm going to basically break it down for you from top to bottom what we're looking at when we talk about a resume. Starting at top, we want your name front and center. Below that, we want what we call a professional or an executive title. Same thing, just depends on what level of experience you have and what type of role you're going after. In the top portion, you are also going to have your mobile phone number, your email address, the URL to your LinkedIn profile.
Customized.
Customize your LinkedIn profile URL. You can customize the public profile. Think of it as yet another branding opportunity. This is a marketing exercise, point blank. And then if you are planning to look for work within the local area, then you'd put your city, state, and zip code, or Washington, you know, that sort of thing. And that's only if you're planning to look for work around the area. If you're looking remote, if you're trying to move across the country, you're going to leave that off. Underneath our professional title is what we have that's called a professional summary or an executive summary. To Tanya's point, we're talking about 3 to 5 lines max. We're really aiming for more to 3. And think of this as the high level summary, the amuse-bouche that's going to explain what you do for a living and how it relates to what you're doing today. X type of professional with X number of years of experience doing, and we're going to focus on the doing because so many of you are pivoting and moving out of the public sector. We want to talk more about what skills are you applying and what outcomes are you helping to procure. So focus on that part. And then below that, we typically have a section. Also, I should note, I'm talking about as 3 to 5 lines. It can be a paragraph. It can be bullet points. So whichever you prefer. Underneath that is your areas of expertise or core competencies. And this is where we're really trying to play the keyword optimization game. If I've figured out my job goals and I'm looking at a bunch of job descriptions that are all similar-ish, and they're the type of role that I think I'm qualified for and is a realistic goal for me to pursue in this next pivot in my career, my next career move, I want to look and see, well, what are all the common threads between the skills and the requirements? And if I possess those, then I want to take those terms, and that's going to help make up my areas of expertise or my core competencies. And then beyond that, we're going into your professional experience, starting with your most recent role and working your ways backwards, focusing on the last 15 years. Some go up to 20. Honestly, the cutoff really kind of depends on where was that job that falls around that time. Do we need to go over a year or so and go to like year 19 because we want to show the full work there? It's really again, how relevant is it? If it's not as relevant, maybe I'm not including it. So I will say that these are guidelines. They are not hard and fast rules. I just got a note that said my internet's unstable. Can everyone still hear me?
We hear
Am I
you, just
frozen?
you're kind of frozen a bit.
Or am I
Your
okay?
audio is fine. Yeah. You're back.
Okay. I just won't bob my head so much. And then beyond the work experience, you know, for those who have been in their careers for longer than 15, 20 years, you're going to have an earlier career history or a career note that's a nod to what you did previously. And then we go into education, professional development, which may include languages, which may include relevant certifications, ongoing continued education, as well as whatever academic degrees you've earned. And again, same thing, if we're cutting off our experience after a certain point, we are still going to include the education. We're just going to remove the dates associated with it. We don't want them to, you can't assume the recruiter knows you got your undergrad degree if you don't list it. So make sure you still list that information. And then that's the basic format you're working with, but there are all these little extra things you add in. For instance, if you are multilingual, we're going to mention the languages at the end, but in that professional summary, we're going to make sure we have the word multilingual, bilingual, whatever it is, along with the languages, because we want to make sure that that top third of that resume is the snapshot of what a recruiter really needs to understand about you. And then we're going to go into further detail about it further in the document. Same thing, if you have a really great certification, I'm thinking of the PMPs and things of that. If you have an MBA, after your name at the very top, you're going to put a comma and put the initialisms up there. Because again, we want to give them the snapshot of what they need to know about you. And then you can explain where you graduated from and what you majored in at the bottom of your resume on the second page when you're getting into your education. So I always think of that top third as giving that snapshot of what they need to get them interested and wanting to read more. I always call it the amuse-bouche, something to whet the appetite. And yeah, I think that's a high level. There are obviously different things we throw in and out depending on what we have to work with. The name of the game is, what do you have to work with? How do we present it in the best light possible? How do we tell the best story based on where you've come from and what you're looking to do next? And with that, all these guidelines then get bent one way or another to basically show you off the best way possible.
Strategy.
Amanda, there's
Yeah,
a
it's
couple
very
of questions in the chat that talk about the workday or computer programs that require you to put in your year of graduation. So I don't work in that space. So how do you all address that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's the public sector is the only one that ever asked for that information. So for anybody
Also
who's pivoting out of
international.
that, you're not going to have that
International
issue.
too.
International. I used
And
to work at
international.
I was
But
shocked.
if you're not going international, it's typically does not come up, to be quite honest. It's normally a red flag if they're looking for like birth date and stuff like that, unless so if you're going outside of the public sector, and if you're not necessarily looking to work internationally, that's actually something you're not going to have to worry about as much. I mean, if they require it, you have to do it for that stuff. But like for your average corporate role, they should not be asking that, because there are so many, you know,
there's lawsuits out
Well,
the
Yes,
yin
that's what I was
yang.
going to say. I was
On
just
the
yeah.
recruiter side,
Like-
though, if you are selected to meet with the hiring committee, search committee, we will send a form and ask you to list your graduation dates because we need to verify degrees.
Yeah, and that's separate. That's after you've already gotten through the initial vetting. So,
Right.
you know, yeah.
So there's a question here quickly about the UN. I used to work there. Yes, they're going to ask you. I was shocked when they asked me, so how old are you? This is a while back. It was easy for me to answer that then. A question, Amanda, on I often see, sometimes you see core competencies and key achievements as a section, key achievements.
Yeah,
And
I
then
will do it.
Nancy.
I will do selected achievements or highlighted achievements for anybody who's executive level or somebody who has a very long tenure, and something that's really important is going to end up on page 2 of that resume. That's what I will try and work in.
Right.
For those asking about adding bold for emphasis on your resume, 100%. Here's the thing, even today, a little color is okay. But when I say a little color, I'm talking about like one primary color that stands out against a white background so that it's not difficult to read. It should always support and help your candidacy. It should never distract or detract from your candidacy. So whenever you're deciding, same thing as we don't put pictures on our resumes. That
Or
is
pie charts.
yeah, no, we don't do that because it does not work out well when it goes through the technology screens.
Right.
And 2, we don't want them getting distracted by our beautiful faces. We want them focusing on why we're really good for the job. And there are a lot of firms out there that don't want to see that because they don't want to be accused of discrimination. So they don't want to know that information.
They'll reject you right out of hand.
Yeah.
Can I say something about executive? And this is this is to my feds. I get people on the Fed side. I just had a GS-12 calling themselves an executive the other day on there. And I'm like, you're not an executive. You know, the resume they sent me said executive profile or whatever the language was, executive experience, whatever no, you're not an executive. I would argue that the SES, my former SES that are participating, they can legitimately call themselves an executive. Maybe on occasion a 15, but definitely no one who is coming to the table at a lower grade than that, in my view. And it goes to what you're targeting. Some people are targeting jobs based on the published salary rather than their experience. And I'll give a very quick example. Somebody called me, he was a 14. He said, I want to be a director. He sent me a job posting to be at the director level of Boeing. And I said, I don't see any supervisory experience on your resume. He said, well, I haven't supervised anyone. I just said, I don't see any budget or financial stuff on your resume. Nope, I don't have any. You're not qualified to be a director. He got very angry. But look at what they make. But I'm like, okay. And so, Tanya, I'm tossing this to you because I'm sure you see this on occasion. And do you have thoughts?
Well, I only work in executive leadership. So we call it the top of the house of organizations, of companies. And I personally work in the nonprofit space. So with nonprofits associations.
Sorry.
So, but to your point, titles differ. So in the corporate sector, a director might be maybe lower level than in a nonprofit. If it's a small to medium size, it might be applicable. But that's why the description, that's why we want to see size budget, size team. We want to see the scope of work in your portfolio to see if there's apples to apples comparison when you're shifting or pivoting. Because I love, Amanda, how you have used pivot in most of your responses, how you're pivoting from the public sector to the private sector.
We heard a mention of the ATS applicant tracking system. Maybe I'll throw this to Amanda briefly. if folks don't know, can you explain what the ATS systems are and how do people get through the ATS system so that they actually pop up on Tanya's desk?
Sure. So ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System. It's a piece of software. There are various different types out there. Taleo is one that you see a lot. I mean, I know there's a ton. We don't have to go into all their names, but basically, anytime you're submitting a resume or the application onto a website and perhaps you're asked to create a login or you upload your resume and then you're asked all these questions that you have to fill out and kind of fix the information, that's a hint that that company is using some sort of applicant tracking system. Now, they tended to be kind of archaic for a while, but a lot of companies have been ratcheting on AI technology on top of them to try and make them better. But it's important to keep in mind that when applicant tracking systems were first created, and this was for the big companies that were dealing with many, many job listings and thousands of candidates or applicants, they were really trying to eliminate what it deemed to be the least qualified candidates, not necessarily cherry pick the very best. So the idea is that it's taking in your resume, basically scanning the information, parsing it out, and trying to assess value for, do you possess this skill or not? Do you possess this experience or not? How many years of experience do you have? They're all a little different, but they're basically helping employers identify who they shouldn't be looking at all because they're not qualified, and then trying to look at those that are deemed probably the most likely to be qualified, and then whittle that pile down to then call individuals. So you'll hear a lot that, you know, applicant tracking systems screen out 75% of all online applications. This technology itself does not reject you. It's a tool that's used by employers, but wouldn't you know, if it's ranking the applications and telling you that this group is probably the most qualified, that top 25% is all that a recruiter's really looking at. So just to give you an idea.
And that's why I think it's important to, when you are looking at roles, is ensuring to modify or update your resume that captures some of what is included in those job descriptions. So Amanda talked about it earlier, some of the key themes, some of the key roles and responsibilities, include those, because those tracking systems will pick up those words.
Yeah. So there are a couple things that will make your resume less likely to pass through these. The keyword optimization is a big one, and I'm going to set that aside for a second, but we want to talk about file type. You are best to keep it to a Word document or a PDF file. If the system says it accepts PDFs, that's always the best because it keeps your formatting intact, and your Word document's the backup. If you're looking at formats where they have kind of like, you know, a skinny column on one side and then the main section is the bigger, it's not my favorite format either. But if you're going to go with one of those, the skinnier column, what we call the rail, that always needs to be on the left-hand side. If it's on the right-hand side, it tends to get scrambled. You don't want to include images. You don't want to include custom fonts. You don't want to include custom or specialized bullet points because that, again, will not be translated properly. If you want to know how scrambled or how great your resume will hold up when it goes through one of these systems, copy the whole application and paste it into a plain text file, plain text document, and see what happens when you paste it in. If information goes randomly in weird spots and it's not staying in order, or if something becomes a bunch of weird characters and doesn't remain language, then you know there are issues. If you request a free resume review from Top Resume, it will actually say, based on what we see, this is what we think your email address is. This is what we think your name is. This is what we think this the type of role you're looking for. And this is what we think your top skills are. And if you look at that and say, oh, that is not right, then that means that your resume is not going to fare well in an applicant tracking system. Also, for anyone who's using a Word document, you never, ever, ever want to put important information in the actual header or footer sections of the resume. You want to put, your contact information towards the top, but you're not actually double clicking into that header section because that actually tends to get scrambled and messed around. And if that's your contact information, that's an issue. And the last is if you're including hyperlinks, which for some, if you have an online portfolio, if that makes sense for your type of role, or anything else you want to that you want to backlink to something that's important, keep in mind that when that gets parsed, the words that are being hyperlinked will disappear and only the URL will be left behind. So make sure that you're not hyperlinking with some language that you really want them to see if they're looking at a parsed version of your resume. In terms of keywords, and I will go quickly, I promise, but this is probably the most important. The way to figure out how to get your base or foundational resume put together once you have a clear job goal in mind is look at a bunch of job listings, even if they're across the country and you don't want them, but you say,
Right.
this is the type of role I feel comfortable going after. This makes sense. There are enough of them to apply for. This is the goal. You want to take those and then look at them and see what are the most common terms, phrases, requirements, both soft and hard skills. What tends to be the common themes, and have I incorporated those throughout my resume? We do not play the game where we like type them in very tiny font and white font at the bottom. Recruiters know this. If you have
Yes.
to be able to actually say you possess those skills, but incorporate that in. And then when it comes to applying for a specific job, that's when you're going to take a closer look and say, okay, what exactly is this job description saying? Do I talk about the same skill, but I use different terms? Okay, in this case, I'm gonna change the language so that it matches up, it aligns with what they're asking for. So again, I aligned with their requirements.
I want to give you an example of something, a mistake that I made many, many moons ago. I was in my 20s, early 20s, and it was one of my first jobs I was applying to, and I was desperate for a job.
Hey,
And I put
happens.
something on my resume because it matched what was in the job description. So it was, the creation of macros, I guess in Excel. So through the interview questioning, I guess maybe the hiring manager, I asked a question that I could not necessarily answer. So he took me to the computer and asked me to create a macro. And I was not able to do that. And from that point on, I said, I will never lie in my resume because you just, we do ask for skill, we do ask skill-based questions. So we will say demonstrate, and then of course we check references, we do soft references, et cetera, to ensure, to your point, that was one of these questions, that you want to make sure that you did do the work that you said you did.
Right.
I'm going to turn to these questions more specifically now because we're short on time. So I'm going to sort of go through this, and we've answered some of this. So just give me a sec, folks. There was, I want to say on the ATS question, I myself have used through AI, ChatGPT. I'm sure the other platforms have ATS scoring agents. And so I have found them useful. Are they accurate? Beats me. But it's a metric to show you how well your resume and cover letter, both, particularly the resume, score in their version of an ATS. And of course, Amanda's company does this work as well, I believe.
Yes.
So AI is replacing the same positions. We talked about the salary difference. That Nancy spoke about salary difference between federal or government roles and private sector. We kind of hit that one a bit. Is there a resume template that you can share? I will say that we are sharing contents, documents, links on the landing page of the pivot at novaeda.org. So I will in post ask this panel if they've got templates or things they'd like to share that we can post on the landing page.
Okay.
There's one question regarding recruiters relying on LinkedIn, but I guess the question is there a distinction between how you use LinkedIn and how you use a resume? Should they be identical? Should they be different? Who has an opinion on that?
Oh, I bet we all have opinions.
Yeah. I think you're gonna have to call on someone, John.
Nancy, what is your opinion?
So my opinion is you got to have a profile, right? Let's start with that. And I get a lot of resistance from my feds around that. That's a baseline. You need to customize your URL. You need your picture on it. You need a robust headline, not just the default to your job title. And I mean, that's 220 characters of potential algorithm happy stuff and a robust about section. you do need to populate your experience. Please make sure that your dates match the dates on your resume and that you have a theme. There should be a through thread between your resume, what you're doing, your LinkedIn, and your tell me about yourself. I had a client who I was talking to, was an HR person. I go to her LinkedIn. It's all about selling real estate. Oh, you're going to do that on my HR time? I think not, right? So it shouldn't be identical, but it should be consistent.
I say
That's
to complement one another, but
complement. Good.
you utilize LinkedIn to tell the story of who you are as a person. And so we as recruiters go to LinkedIn. That's the first place. If you said
Right.
to me, Nancy, I want you to meet Amanda Augustine. She's fabulous. The first thing I'm going to do is go to LinkedIn to learn more about her. So it's part of your
Absolutely.
presence. It's part of your brand. And again, in executive search, we're looking at your executive presence. So it gives us more opportunity to see who you are as an individual. How do you show up in the workplace? What is, you're able to really sell your expertise. So if you are an AI expert or an expert in federal policy, we see that you've testified on the Hill, or we see that you are writing articles on XYZ issues. It just helps support who you are. It gives us more context. And hiring managers, companies, firms, that's one of the first places they're going to do. They're going to look at your resume, but they're also going to look at your LinkedIn to say, how does this person show up in the workplace? What type of culture do they, thrive in? Those types of things.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that, you need to tell a consistent story, a consistent career narrative on paper, online, and in person.
Bingo.
But how exactly you present all that and which details you're sharing is going to differ. A resume is still a very cut and dry type of document. We don't use first person. We don't use I, me. We use what we call silent first person. So those words are just kind of removed. It is the most succinct way to get your skill set across, but it's not as necessarily as feely touchy, right? Whereas LinkedIn is a social media platform. And so it does have a social element to it. The about section can use first person. I like to always put the professional summary at the end of my about, but I start out everybody's LinkedIn profile with the word I. I've been doing this, and from the moment I started doing this, I was passionate about doing X, Y, and Z. I try and explain why I'm excited and interested in what I'm doing. Show your
More personal.
personality,
Mhm.
because the resume unfortunately doesn't get to show that off as much, and we're still trying to get that company cultural fit. They still want to see, what would it be like to work with this person on a regular basis. So the articles you share, the conversations you engage with, the art, anything like that. If you join a group that's related to the work that you're pursuing next, we know recruiters hang out in those as well, if that's their target audience for getting talent. But two, you're going to also make new networking connections, and you're also going to show people, what do you care about, what you think about, and you're giving them a sense of your personality.
And be active on there, make connections with
Yeah.
people. So if you are aspiring to work for a certain kind of company or a specific sector, reach out to those individuals and connect with them. So being connected, a lot of it is who you know. Again, we talked about it earlier, it's 6 degrees of separation. So reach out to individuals, sign up for coffees, just be active on LinkedIn.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nancy.
There's a great question in the chat about how do I want to apply for a variety of roles. And that's hard. I'm making an assumption here that no one here is entry level.
Fair.
And pivoting is about translating your experience to something new and different, but not pretending. I mean, if you've spent your life as an IT person it is going to be very difficult, I think, to all of a sudden become a budget person or an HR person at anywhere close to a similar level to what you're at now, just because you have a hankering for it. And so it goes back to doing, at least in my view, that upfront work of figuring out what are my skills, what are my values, how can I translate that from IT to budget, or whatever the thing is, and start writing that stuff down. And that may require less of a DI, because that's complex. It may require less of a DIY approach and more of a guided, coached approach. And you've got to do informational interviewing and networking, and that's going to take time, and you might need a course or a program or two. I don't know how the two of you feel about that, but it's hard. Pivots are, total pivots, 180s are hard.
No,
The-
I mean, I
Go
know
ahead,
we're
Amanda.
really short on time, but
Yeah.
the one of the, if when we were talking about kind of what are those, what could you do today to move your career forward sort of thing?
Yes.
And what I really had in mind was, back to Nancy, was to really do the legwork and research to better understand how realistic your goals are, given the current job market, given your marketable skills, given your non-negotiables, because whatever that goal is going to dictate how your resume changes, what your networking strategy is going to be, how you need to change your LinkedIn profile, even how you're going to pitch yourself to others. And so explore 100%. If you say, but I could do 5 different things, and there are a lot of individuals out there to say, I could either go this direction or that direction because I have skill sets and they're all reasonable options for me. I think that's great. Now go and look and see what jobs are available. How realistic is each one of those? Do an advanced search on LinkedIn for somebody who previously worked in a similar role as you, but has moved on, a couple of years ago. What are they doing? Go talk to those individuals. You got to get a better sense, and you really got to kind of pick one major lane, because while you can have many different tailored resumes, even though it's challenging, you only have one LinkedIn profile. You're not allowed to have multiple LinkedIn profiles, and they all have to be telling the same story. And if they're shooting in multiple directions, that just dilutes your brand instead of focusing it into one direction and making you the best candidate possible for that. And I think it's important to mind that it could just be a short-term stepping stone job to a greater pivot in a few years' time. So when we talk about this being a marathon and not a sprint, I think you really got to think the long game and say, ultimately, this is where I want to get to, which is dramatically different. But maybe I need to conduct some informational interviews. I put some information in the chat for you all about that, to better understand, are there any gaps that are obvious that I would need to fill through experience or certifications or upskilling in order to make me more qualified for that? And so is there a different role I need to target in the short term to help me ultimately get to that longer term goal?
This has been great. I appreciate all the input, and I hope the audience, I believe you're getting a lot out of this, and I wish it were a longer session, but unfortunately time has a constraint. I would encourage the audience, this has been fantastic. Thank you all very, very much on the panel. I would encourage the audience to go and look at the last several Pivot episodes. In particular, well, I'd look at all of them. And when you go on the YouTube page, there are snippets. You don't have to torture yourself with hour-long session. You just go to the snippet and pick up. I try to choose the ones that I thought were most relevant. However, the last 2 sessions, one was how to own your story as your pivot. That was 2 episodes ago. And that last episode was regarding LinkedIn optimization. If you take those 3, and this one today, you have a great toolkit to march forward over the next few weeks. This series will take a second half August pause. Our next episode is September 2nd, 2 p.m. Eastern. And that's where we'll focus. I can't remember the actual name of the session, but it's about starting your own, how to start your own business, how to conceive a business and actually build a business plan. So we'll get into that. But I do encourage you to please take a look at earlier sessions, look at the snippets if you're time crunched. And we will be putting content. This video will be on demand as of tomorrow, and then we'll have other materials on the landing page of the pivot at novaeda.org. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the audience. Keep the faith, keep going. You all will get through this. It just may take a little time. So thanks, everybody. Take care. See you on September 2nd.
Thank you all.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Sean.
Thank
And
you.
sleep in
Bye-bye.
peace. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.